Hello, everybody, and welcome to the September 26th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
We have 5 races to bring you this week. We'll try to cover all the bases. We're still dealing with the inside bias on the main track and some turf races to bring you as well. And we'll start off with none of the above as we take a look at Prize Taker, who was first off the claim here for trainer Charlton Baker. This is the 4th race from September 18th, the number 2 Prize Taker.
Yeah, this is an interesting horse going forward, a horse that both Eric and I were interested in going to the race. And there's a whole lot of interesting things going on here. Number one, Prize Taker was a horse that had shown a little bit of ability earlier in her career, and she had tailed off badly, but what she is a deep closer. She was off the claim for trainer Charlton Baker, moving up in class, and she showed a very surprising speed. I know it was a mile, but she had gone 7 before and come from dead last. So the fact that she was showing speed, I think, is what caught our eye right away.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a big difference from the running style she had shown in the past when she had been pretty much, a deep closer in sprint races. She'd been on the turf once where she was able to stalk a little bit, but this, by far, the most amount of early ambition that she's shown. And right here, you got to like what you're seeing. I mean, the horse is just slightly in front of the one. La Java, the rider seems to have it settled. Then all of a sudden, I don't know what goes on here. Guillermo Rodriguez pushes the button and tries to make a Belmont Stakes type of move here around the far turn and open up 2 or 3 lengths for a horse that, going 23-46 and change is just too fast for her.
Yeah, I mean, this is an extraordinarily fast pace for this quality horse. 23-2, 46-4. And just to put it into perspective, the final time was 139-1. So 46-4, she went, and then they came home in 52-2. So this was a monstrously fast pace that couldn't be kept up, and also coupled out with the fact that whether the horse was bearing out or the rider couldn't get her inside, she's out in the 3 or 4 path the whole way around and not towards the very, very good inside. So she's not in the better part of the racetrack. She's going way too fast, and she actually hangs in there reasonably well until about the 3/16 to the 8th pole. I thought it was just such a demonstratively better record that won't be reflected in her final finish, because the final finish she loses by 6 3/4, 7 1/4, 9.5 lengths here, and she ran a lot better than that, Eric.
Oh, a ton better than that. I mean, this is just a night and day performance compared to what she was for a previous trainer as opposed to now. The question is, going forward, what do they decide to do? Do they turn her back a little bit, maybe try to get a 7-furlong race for her?
Yeah, you probably don't want to go a mile with her. You probably want to have a different rider on there. Now, the problem is she's not going to look particularly sexy, so getting a top rider may not be the easiest thing to do. But when you have Joel Rosario coming back and Jose Lozcano coming back, I think there's a trickle-down effect, which there will be better riders available. We've been lost, obviously, 2 of our top riders here, so that's certainly hurt things. And the fact that she showed this speed, I think that she really turned things back around for Charlton, and in the right spot, she could be competitive. And it's not just necessarily her. I think she's a good example of the kind of horse you sometimes want to look for. A horse that may not have, in result, done significantly better off the claim, but actually ran a lot better off the claim within the race.
And it showed a little bit of different style, just showed a little bit more life than the last couple times she'd been out there. We'll move on now to race number 8 from September 18th. A 2-to-1 allowance optional claimer for fillies and mares going a mile on the turf.
This is it's so funny because Marielle and Kathy, and we talked about this before the race, Marielle and Kathy is coming out of a race, and this is a great dynamics lesson where the pace completely evaporated. The horses that were last and second to last ran 1-2, and Marielle and Kathy had been the lone survivor, actually, of that. Floral Romance, the 6, she had benefited greatly from that pace, though she had a wide trip in finishing second. We'll also talk a little about Rock My Heart. Floral Romance interests me more. This was a race where the pace was very moderate, and it dramatically hurt the closers, and I think it forced both Rock My Heart and also very much the middle of the race, Floral Romance, to make premature moves.
It's funny how we can go into the race thinking, we like the 3 because she was, finished behind Floral Romance last time out, and then coming out of this race, we're going to like Floral Romance more than the 3, who was Muriel and Kathy here going forward. But in any case, you see the race kind of developing here, very slow to develop here with Muriel and Kathy on the front end. You have the 1, Anna Sophia, in second, sitting on the rail.
Floral Romance is 4 wide here. I think it's important to note that she's way out in the clear, and she's 4 wide, and she commences her rally way, way too soon and way too wide. Rock My Heart was already a little closer. She has a little more natural speed.
And you see Floral Romance make the move there as she starts to move up around the turn. It's going to turn out to be an insider race. The 3, the 1, the 2, they're the top 3 finishers in here. They're all sitting on the rail.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Eric. You see the horses that ran well stayed inside. The horses that didn't do well were the wide movers.
And, the 7 horse in here, Rock My Heart, not sure how much you want this horse going forward. Just thought a little bit of dynamics against it, but she's had a couple shots for Chad Brown already. I don't know how good she is. Maybe she's slightly better than this effort here, but of of the two that we're highlighting here, I think Floral Romance definitely the one you want.
Yeah, I have no opinion on Rock My Heart. I'll never be betting her in a competitive field. But she's done absolutely nothing for me in either races. Whereas Floral Romance has run well in 3 times in her career. So what she's shown is she needs to get a little bit of pace up front, but she needs to make the last move. Mm-hmm. She can't make a middle move wide. She can't get this kind of trip. I'm not blaming Junior Alvarado. He was between a rock and a hard place here, and I think he was just trying to get his horse in a race that was paceless. But here's something, and I'm not pinpointing this particular race. I wish riders would think about that before races. Far too often, they're way, way too unaggressive and to the point of taking their horses out of the race early. And then, when the pace gets slow, quarter of the mile of the race, go, oh, it's slow. That's why Richard Migliori says, get your position going forward, and those situations won't occur as much. And I think that's not the case with Floral Romance. She's got to sit back. She's going to have to be able to save a little ground. She's going to need a couple things to go in her favor. Having said that, on these turf courses, she shouldn't have to worry about that all the time. But in this case, the dynamics were for speed and inside.
All right, we'll move on to the dirt now for the 9th race on September 18th. State bred 2 of an allowance optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up going 6.5 furlongs. And as the races continue to play out here on the main track, the inside continues to be strong.
The most mystifying ride, I think, of the week was the ride on Jeter here, the number 4 horse who ends up finishing 7th. Now, maybe Jeter has some issues, but Jeter was the clear speed in this race, and for whatever reason, and you can see it, this rider wrangles this horse back. Now, Uncle T7 ended up making a wide middle move. I don't understand how both Cracker Jack Jones and Longing for the City ended up being the 2 speeds here in a monstrously slow pace. I can understand why they'd have the lead in the slow pace. I don't understand how there was a slow pace here, but the reason was the Jeter, for whatever reason, was just strangled back.
Far too easy for these 2 horses to clear from the outside there and get over to the rail and the 2-path there. And, Jeter being taken back definitely affects the way the race plays out here, because if Jeter goes to lead, you have to think at least Long for the City's not going to be around for the finish, and probably Cracker Jack Jones either.
Yeah, this race was won by the way it was run, not by who was in it. And Be Bullish. I mean, Bill Bullish, it's another thing. You got to go get your position going forward. Don't go out of the gate thinking, I'm going to rate. Let's see how the race develops. Now, I have no idea what's going on with Jeter. And watch Jeter in the stretch is too wide. The rider just completely gives up on Jeter. I don't know if there was an issue, and I'll be interested to see if he comes back. If he doesn't come back, then the reason there's an issue. But if he comes back on short rest, then this is ridiculous. On the outside of him is Uncle T7, who tried to make a middle move wide. Impossible to do. Slow pace, track playing towards the inside. The whole field was compromised, including Litigate as well.
Yeah, Litigate coming off a freshening, skipped Saratoga for trainer Dave Duggan. Had some success here at Belmont in the spring, but this race just did not play out well for Litigate, who's a one-run, come-from-behind closer. The way the track's playing, I mean, you can make that kind of run if you're saving ground, but if you're not saving ground, you're as good as finished at the top of the stretch.
Even take a horse like Modern Child, who actually I think was a new gelding. I thought he was a little interesting in this race, just moving forward, using as a prep. He stayed on the rail the whole way, and there he was running a little at the end. The horses that, Be Bullish was on the rail. He angled out in the stretch. The horses that were making wide moves, the middle portions or any portions of the race, and never on the rail, those horses, they just evaporated because, for whatever reason, they were never on the inside or down towards the inside. 3 of the first 4 finishers were on the rail for a big portion of the race, and the one who finished second was in the 2-path on the slow pace. I don't understand why the riders are seeding races so early in the race. They should be going aggressively and letting the chips fall as they may. If they had in this race, we could have seen a very different result.
We could have indeed. We'll move on to the 6th race now from September 19th, a turf race going 7 furlongs as a state bred 2 of an allowance optional claimer for fillies and mares. Interested in about 4 horses in here, so we'll break it and we'll set them up as they straighten out down the backstretch here and just get their position so you can kind of see what we're talking a little bit about here. The horse that goes on to the lead is the one Double the Energy, who ends up winning the race. Now the horse is sitting second and third. The second horse is the 4 Neck of the Moon, who's going to drop back a little bit and come back on to finish second here. The 5 Rake and Gold. I didn't get this ride at all. This horse is in good position right now and is just going to drop back to next to last here. Just a very confusing ride for me. Toward the back of the pack, a couple of horses are going to be pace compromised and in a little bit of trouble. The 3 Downtown Hottie and the 7 also in the race, and that's Jitney.
Actually, I thought the rider Downtown Hottie, Manuel Franco, was one of the best job. He actually tried to move her up early and get her in position, sensing the slow pace, because she's a turnback who doesn't have much speed going longer. So he did the best he could. Jitney is, I think she was hurt by distance and those things. The ride on Break and Goal was just silly. I mean, she was getting her position going going backwards in a race that was ultimately won on the front end. And once again, especially in turf races on fair turf courses, when you see horses wire the field, especially at 8-1, and the winner had a right to win this, I think dynamics are always going to be something that should be in the forefront of your mind.
Well, you can even make that case for Neck of the Moon, who's outside the horse in the yellow there that we just highlighted, and Rake and Gold toward the back and the white. I mean, remember, these horses were sitting second and third right off the one. Now they're fourth and seventh as they go around the turn, losing all position. And this is another race where the inside horses, did pretty well. Vicky's Dancer, who's sitting third, I think, down on the rail, is going to finish third here. The winner of the race is up front. Neck of the Moon, comes back on and makes a good run in here. We'll pause it right now because a couple of horses are going to get in trouble there. We see Jitney swinging wide. You have a Neck of the Moon who's highlighted there, and in toward the back you'll see Downtown Hottie, who's a little bit more inside of Rake and Gold. They're both going to steady a little bit in the stretch.
I'll be honest with you. I think an argument can be made that Jitney ran the best race of any of the horses we're talking about, and that she was widest of all. She probably doesn't want 7 furlongs. She's probably better at 6, and she came from dead last. She actually finished 4th in here, Eric. I mean, I know others had trouble, and I hear your argument with Rake and Gold. I've yet to see her run well enough to win this race, but that's fine. She could do well going forward. She may want a little less distance, but Jitney, at least she made a run into this pace. Nobody else even closed.
Yeah,
but she was also clear. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's fine. No, she ran well in here, and she's certainly a horse that has some back numbers and back races where she gets a fair setup. She's going to be very tough in here. I just think this is an interesting race because going forward, I don't want double the energy off the way the race unfolded here. Vicky's Dancer, I think, had a pretty good setup too. Neck of the Moon, maybe you could argue she probably could have won the race if she stayed and maintained her position close to the pace there.
Yeah, she's more in the obvious front. I have no problem with that. I agree. These are the kind of races that, listen, there's a lot of different discussions. We could probably sit here for 20 minutes and go through this horse and what it could have done and what could have happened. And I think these are the kind of races that just the discussions help you learn what's going on. And then you look at these horses going forward, how do they do? And which parts of your thoughts, you have to think about this, were correct and which parts were not correct, And you have to think about their dynamics going forward. It's an ongoing discussion of taking apart races. And you're right, this is a really interesting race. And one of the reasons is, and we saw it in the last 2 turf races, dynamics dictated results.
They do indeed, and it happens a lot of the time. And sometimes you just have to be on the lucky end of it because you don't know how it's going to play out.
Well, luck and not. I mean, that's one of the reasons speed can be dangerous. But clearly, the riders have to be more aware of that and think more about their position early, because a position early has a dramatic effect on how you're going to do in a race. And I think sometimes people are all too sort of flip about it. And I'll just let the chips fall as they may. My horse is good enough, it'll win. It's not as simple as that.
We'll take a look at the Gallant Bloom now, our final race here on this week's episode of Trips and Traps. And we're going to take a look at the 2 Cluster of Stars, who wins the race quite impressively off the layoff for trainer Steve Asmussen, and also Dance to Bristol and Dance Card. These are the top 3 finishes here. But, there's implications going forward with each one of these horses, I think.
Absolutely. Now, take nothing away from Cluster of Stars. She's a wonderful horse, comes off the layoff, gets a 106 buyer. But the bottom line is she rode a very strong inside to victory in this race, and that had a lot to do with her win. And I think you talk about learning about horses by their defeats more than their victories. I think that's the case with Dance to Bristol, who, despite having 7 straight wins, I think she ran as well, if not better, in this race than she ran in any of those races, making a premature 4-wide move on the gold rail here against a very good horse in Cluster of Stars, and Dance Card making her first start since the end of November, a 10-month layoff, going shorter than she wants to go. She, too, back to last early, makes a big, wide middle move in here and stays on reasonably well. I think we're going to see some very good things from her going forward. And Dance to Bristol, she lost nothing in this defeat. Cluster of Stars, she was the impressive winner. The other 2 ran very well.
That's exactly the case in here, and you see Dance Card highlighted toward the back there. Cluster of Stars, not Breeders' Cup nominated. Seems like she'll be pointed to a New York bred race here on a showcase day. But you see Dance to Bristol coming up, making this big menacing move, and Xavier Perez very confidently looking around for the competition. He only has to keep an eye in front of him for the competition, though, because Cluster of Stars is going to re-break and draw off there. I mean, I think he thought he had Cluster of Stars measured and was going to go by here, but when they straighten away, Cluster of Stars just has an extra gear.
He underestimated his competition, and he didn't do enough homework to understand this racetrack. I understand he was cocky and confident. He has a filly that got him there before, but in this case, he wasn't going to win anyway, but he was too overconfident. I think Dance Card got absolutely what they wanted out of this race. I don't think the Kieran McLaughlin Carbonet Illusions, they were going to win this race. Obviously would have liked to have won it, but I think he realized what he was up against. And I like Xavier Perez as a rider. I think he's a really young, good rider. He rode some turf race on Saturday, and he made a premature move moving, one of them. Another one, he gave a very good ride. But overall, I like him as a young rider. He's come up here. He's been successful in some big races with a couple of horses. And this needs to be a learning experience for him. But I still think that she's okay, and I wouldn't rule out her chances of getting a big part of that Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. I'm sorry.
I agree. What do they do with Dance Card going forward? Do you have any idea where they're going to run her?
I got to say stretch her out. I mean, I can't imagine they're ready to tackle a Breeders' Cup race, but who knows? Maybe they're looking at the Sprint. I don't think they're going to be taking on Royal Delta in the distaff. They could be looking at the turn back alarm here, the closing weekend, whatever the case. She's a very good horse. I hope she stays sound because I'd love to see her run into next year. Don't win a race and then retires a broodmare. Godolphin has enough broodmares. Let's see this filly and soon-to-be mare show what she can do on the racetrack because she can do an awful lot.
That would be nice. I'm looking forward to see what she can do moving forward, and we're always looking forward to your comments at tripsandtraps@NYRAinc.com.
Thanks for watching.